Take my lips and speak with them. Take our minds and think with them. Take our hearts and set them on fire with love for you and all your people. Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. Jeremiah was kind of tough there, wasn't he? And we didn't get much respite from the psalm. Some nice words in the letter to the Hebrews, but even still there was some. And then we get to this gospel reading. And today I'm going to change things up a little and ask you to help me take this gospel reading apart. Okay? You ready? What were the leaders and the Pharisees doing?
Sitting down at the head of the table.
Sitting down at the head of the table. But even before that, first line.
They were inviting their rich friends.
They were watching. What was that?
Inviting their rich friends.
They were inviting their rich friends. Yes, they were. They were that too. They were watching. They were watching. Why were they watching Jesus? To know who was going to be set above whom? I'm wondering, that could be true. I think it was more they were watching to catch him. Because that's what these Pharisees had been doing. That's what these leaders had been doing. Waiting for Jesus to do something so they can get him. What was Jesus doing? Oh, well, yes, but before he started teaching, what was he doing? He was noticing. He was watching. He was looking. He was seeing what they were doing. What these Pharisees and these rich people who were invited were doing, and how they were all jockeying for position, the best position. And what were the guests doing? They were jockeying around to see who could sit where, right? I want to be in the best spot. And what was our host doing? Here we have to do an imagination, I think, because it doesn't really say that in there. What do you think the host was doing? The leader of the Pharisees who invited Jesus into dinner, this fancy dinner party.
Earning brownie points.
Earning brownie points. Or trying to. How was he earning the brownie points, though?
Rich and famous.
The rich and famous? What was he serving? What did we smell cooking? What do you think was being cooked? You don't know?
It's probably pizza.
Pizza. Spaghetti and meatballs. It was the rich and famous. It was probably a pretty fancy thing. There was probably wonderful aromas coming there. What do you think the people were wearing? Fancy clothes. What would that fancy clothing feel like?
Linen, probably.
Linen?
Yeah.
Silk? Yeah. Yeah, some amazing stuff was going on. And so what was Jesus' response? What was his response to what he noticed? He turned it all upside down. Exactly. Yes. Yes. He turned it upside down. How did he turn it upside down? He told a parable. Exactly. He kind of schooled them with that parable too, didn't he? He said, hey, you're doing it wrong. This isn't the way it works in God's kingdom. What are you up to here? This isn't it. So Jesus was doing what he often does. But most often we hear that Jesus was healing, don't we? We hear a lot of stories of healing. There's a lot of teaching and preaching, but a lot of healing stories in our Gospels, particularly. And he turned it all upside down. Just like he did in the temple, when he turned the tables and drove the money changers out. Here, this time, though, he didn't turn these fancy tables upside down, but he certainly turned their hearts and minds upside down, didn't he? All these guests. And I wonder if that's also healing. Do you think maybe this turning upside down, thinking differently, was a healing act by Jesus? Not described that way, but I can certainly see it that way.
Don't you have to squirm first?
Don't you think they were squirming? She asked, don't you have to squirm first? And I think they probably were squirming. They kind of didn't have anything to say when he told them the parable. So, and the second parable he gave us, the one we really know so well, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. That hits home to us a lot, doesn't it? We probably think about that a lot. Jesus tells them, don't invite your rich friends. Don't invite the people who can return the invitation and invite you to their house for a fancy dinner. Invite the people who can't pay you back. Whoa! Turning it upside down. That's not the way we behave, is it? That's not really what we do. So, a personal story. My former parish, I was a big-time leader. You can probably guess that. We had an anniversary dinner every fall for the parish. It was 150, 175 years old or something like that. So they would always do a fundraising dinner. We'd bring out the fancy tablecloths, the flower arrangements. We'd all get dressed in our finest clothing. We would charge $50 to $150 a ticket to come to this dinner. We'd invite our rich friends who could come to this dinner. Yeah. We switched it from an anniversary dinner because I thought we got to honor the ministry that's going on. And I said, let's call it the Spirit of the Community Dinner. Then more people will want to come, right? We'll get more people from the community. We'll honor somebody in the community who's actually doing something good that we uphold as wonderful ministry and honor them with this dinner and make money at the same time. We also had a feeding ministry, a Saturday night free meal. It was an ecumenical thing. There were like 9 churches, so they spread that out over the year. They didn't cook very often, but they came to our church and would prepare the meal about 3:30 in the afternoon, serve the meal, set up the tables, and serve by 5 o'clock. What do you think happens on that Saturday night when we're doing this Spirit of the Community dinner? What do you think happens to the feeding ministry?
People who usually come came.
The people who usually come? No, we actually told them to go to another place.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
Herein lies the parable.
Thank you, Sandy. Herein lies the parable. Indeed. Herein lies the... We sent that ecumenical ministry to another church. They came back the next week when we were done with our big fancy thing. I had a brilliant idea. Maybe I'd heard this passage. I said to the committee planning this, why don't we invite the people who are coming to this dinner to come to the dinner with us? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be doing what Jesus told us to do in this parable? What do you think the response was? Oh, you all understand that one. Yeah, there were different kinds of responses. Oh, they wouldn't want to sit with us all dressed up and listening to these awful speeches. They wouldn't want to do that. What do you think the subtext really was?
We don't want to invite them.
We don't want to sit with them. We don't want to have to make conversation with them. Oh dear. Oh dear. There I was trying to turn things upside down. Which leads me to an image that my mentor and the founder of the Kaleidoscope Institute, with whom I work and do a lot of congregational development work, Eric Law. He has this image, this theory, this concept called the cycle of gospel living. And it's a circle, and it keeps moving. Up at the top is power. That's resurrection. That's life in the gospel cycle. And you move down through that circle, and at the bottom is death, the tomb, the cross. And we can move back up. But what I see happening here in this gospel passage, and a lot of times in our world, is that we're not moving in that cycle. There are people who have the power and the privilege at the top of that circle, and they keep it. So if we activate that cycle of gospel living, if we give up our power and privilege for a time and listen, if we use our senses like Jesus was doing in this, he did everywhere he went. He used his senses, all 5 of them, and his heart, to listen, to hear. He turned that upside down. He invited the people who had no power to speak. But what happens if the people who have no power suddenly have the power and stay with the power? What might happen? Revolution.
They become just like the people that were at the top.
Right. They begin to be the oppressor as well. That's why I say this has to keep moving. And that's why Jesus, I think, was going around and turning things upside down all the time. Turning. See, this hymn is coming to my head. The Canticle of the Turning. We just keep moving, we keep turning, and God keeps revealing for us when we allow that cycle to move. When we stop and use our senses, use our heart, use our eyes, use our ears in particular, to listen and hear what's going on in the world. When we listen to our neighbor, what might happen? Second great commandment. Hint, we might love our neighbor. Ellie, you were going to...
Their conscience might be touched.
Yes.
And they might meet some people that are really interesting, that aren't just showing off.
Yes.
And they might have different kinds of dinner parties in the future.
Might be more fun, those dinner parties.
More fun.
So we're turning it all upside down. We have to keep doing that. God invites us, and Jesus' example invites us to continually use all of our senses. Our smell, our hearing, our listening, our hearing, our seeing. What are we observing in the world? Our touch, and not just our tactile touch, the touch with our hearts. And we can keep turning the world upside down, changing, cycling through. And then we can see God's kingdom, which is here. I don't think we're waiting for it. I think it's here. We obfuscate it. We get things in the way of it. It's here. But if we're willing to turn upside down a little bit, be turned upside down, use all of our senses, we can be God's hands, God's eyes, God's lips in this world. Amen.
Amen.